Hey everybody, welcome to episode 72 of the Is That Normal podcast. And today we're going to talk about brothers and sisters.
Yes, and we both have siblings.
We
So
do.
I've got one sibling, a younger sister. She's about 7 years younger than me. So how about yourself?
I have a multitude of halves and step brothers and sisters, but I have one younger brother who we were the two siblings that we grew up, our whole childhood we were together, and so he's 5 years younger than I am.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about particularly your brother that you
Yeah.
grew up around. Your interactions, your relationship growing up. What was that like?
Yeah, it was a struggle. There was a constant battle going on. We fought significantly, and I'm sure you'll be able to relate in your household to this experience. And just one of the major things was the age difference.
Yeah.
Just that understanding of how to balance. Kind of being older and what I felt like I should be able to do and what he thought he should be able to do, just because, not realizing he was 5 years younger. And then for us, we kind of had a unique situation in just that there was a period of our life where I almost had to take on some more parental type roles, being that much older. And that really caused some issues down the road as we got a little bit older and as he got into his teenage years. That was a little bit of a struggle for us because I had a hard time then kind of stepping out of that role and back into just being a brother role.
Yeah.
And so, it was a little bit difficult. But now, probably as we're now both adults, we've grown much, much closer and been able to move past a lot of those things. But it was definitely a struggle. There were a lot of thrown Hot Wheels and bloody lips and you name it, the typical things with
brothers
brothers.
fighting. Mine was a little different, interestingly, again because of the age gap, but a different result. And with my sister being a sister, not a brother, I think it's a little different. But she was so much younger than me. I felt like an only child. I was almost 7 when she was born, and and that was a little bit of a struggle at first when she was a baby. It's like, she came in and messed up my routine, but and there, when she was younger, there was some of that, she was an annoyance, maybe
Yes.
kind of thing as a kid. But then unfortunately what happened is she got older and I got a little older. There was enough gap. We didn't interact very much. I had my own things. I was out of the house a lot. I was busy, and she was kind of a reclusive person when she was younger. Kind of growing up into elementary age, and kind of did her own thing in her room, and so we just didn't have a whole lot of interactions, and that again has impacted the level of closeness we've felt
Right.
coming into adulthood, and so so I know for me, as I watch my children and as I've watched my life, I recognize how important it is for our kids to have a close and developed relationship with each other. And so today we want to just talk a little bit with parents about, some ways to maybe help foster that for the kids in our household. So Randall, a lot of our ideas today actually come from this great little book that we read as a family in our family devotion time a few years ago called Making Brothers and Sisters Best Friends. And it's actually written by a trio of siblings, 2 sisters and a brother. And they were actually pretty young. The oldest was in her 20s, but the youngest was a young teenager when they wrote this book together. Their names are Sarah, Stephen, and Grace Malley. And as we read through it was fun. It was well written. You got different perspectives of voices and ages there, but really hit home with our kids. Really, we saw a lot of our life in their life, and gave some really good practical tools. And so some neat content there. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the episode.
So I would venture to say, for most people, when you talk about best friends, siblings aren't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind.
No.
So why are we talking about siblings and being best friends, and why is that such a unique?
Yeah, you would maybe think, some good titles would be how to help brothers and sisters not kill each other.
Yeah.
How to help brothers and sisters tolerate each other.
Yes.
How to help
Be in the
brothers and
same
sisters
room
be,
without-
those kind of things. But really, as you think about it, your family, especially as you grow into adulthood and on into life, your family typically is going to be the people who stick out life with you, that are going to be your consistent connections and relationships throughout life. Friends come and go and life changes, but your family's over there, always there for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And so, we want to think about that long game as we are raising our kids. But I think also, and we'll talk more about this in a minute too, but there's just this perspective in our world and our culture today that is almost anti-family. It's pursue your life and what's best for you, and go far and dream big, and those things are good, but a lot of times it's to the cost of the most important relationships in your life is your family. And so we just want to help have a different perspective, I think, of what's possible.
And even back to what you're talking about when you're talking about how we only have our one family, and how they're the ones that we stay close with, spend the most amount of time with. I've found as I've gotten older, family members, specifically those close family members, are the ones that you have the most shared experiences with. And so when we talk about our childhood and things like that, there are very few other people that can relate to those things besides your brothers and sisters and your immediate family. And to me, as I've gotten older, that's become even more important. So what are some of the ways that we can accomplish this as we talk about trying to build those relationships?
Right. And again, a lot of this, the Malley siblings do a really good job of pointing out some real good ways to do this. But they start out talking, and I think, like I said, it starts with challenging an attitude, recognizing that it is okay, it is possible, and maybe even it's best if we form our tightest, closest relationships with those in our immediate family. That is a reasonable thing. I think in our culture, if you look sociologically, you go back 100 years or so, and everywhere beyond that, up to that point, your family was the biggest influencer in who you are, what you believed, what your occupation was. I mean, all of those things came from your family because we were so family centric. We worked the farm together. We did life together. We made the meals together. We cleaned the house together. Everything was a togetherness. And as we've moved through the last 100 years or so, and the Industrial Revolution, I think, had a lot to do with this. That suddenly, we didn't need as much help at home. Suddenly, we had modern conveniences. Suddenly, everybody was working out of the home, and our kids start going off to public school. And suddenly, we start thinking, well, these people are the most significant people in our life. And they've done research today. Young people, particularly teenagers, their friends, their peers, not their parents, not their teachers, but their peers are the biggest influencers of their worldview, of their profession, of their identity, of their well-being, and all of that is wrapped up in friend groups. And that's not always healthy.
Right.
And so I think it doesn't have to be that way. And so I don't think we should just always tolerate our family, that we should look to them to be those healthy, significant things. And so some ways we can do that is, as parents, helping our kids do this is create some shared experiences. Like you said, that history of life together is going to be such an indicator of who we stay close to throughout life. I remember very clearly my wife and I talking about this when we were still dating and we were going to college. Is we found it really interesting when we went away to college that the people we just gravitated towards and became closest friends with were people who came from similar backgrounds, small town, types of family, all of that. And it was just interesting that, we, whether we like it or not, we tend to gravitate towards people who are more or less have some similar background or shared experience. And so as we do that for our kids, we're going to help them create that bond. And so, we have planned family times that are mandatory at our house. And we, sometimes we do it, it's just like recreation, or like watch a movie, but we also try to have really intentional times where we do stuff, whether we do work together as a family, we do things that force us to interact together as a family, we have family devotion together, we have these mandatory times where the family comes together and they're forced to have a shared experience. Whether you like it or not, this is what we're doing. So and then I think maybe one of the biggest things we do is model that type of friendship in our marriages. We model that type of friendship in our family relationships, and help our children see what's possible. Is another really good way.
Well, we know that especially as we mentioned, whenever you're in such close contact, and there's just so many other factors that are involved when you're talking about siblings and close people close to that. So what are some of the barriers to watch out for and things that maybe make it a little bit difficult to navigate this?
Yeah, we already mentioned one. I think it's false concepts that we don't expect for our siblings to be our closest friends, and I think that's a barrier. Another is the high expectation, low expectation graph that happens in our households, because we tend to, with our family, let down our guard and not filter our emotions and reactions as well. And so with that, we have a lower expectation on ourselves in our families, but at the same time, we often have a higher expectation of our families, and we have a greater feeling of injustice when they, take our hairbrush or get mud on our shoes that they borrowed, or or whatever, like things we might overlook with friends or handle differently. With family, it's like we go to 11 immediately on our reaction, and so that's a barrier that we have to kind of notice. And then busyness, our culture, we're just so busy. I know I shared with you when we came in today to get ready to film. My family. This is so often I got 2 kids here and 2 kids there and 2 kids here, and just getting everybody together is harder and harder in our culture. And as they get older, it's harder and harder.
Yeah.
And then bitterness. So some of those are just logistic things I talked about before, but the emotional things are the hardest to detect and maybe the hardest to deal with. And I'd like for maybe you to share a little bit. I know you said you had some struggles in your family for various reasons. So what are some of the ways that you maybe dealt with that?
Yeah, there was a couple of things that I experienced, personally with my brother and I. For one, especially in maybe a household that sometimes isn't as overall healthy as you would want it to be growing up. There tended to be this competition, and I think that's the case no matter what in any family setting when you have more than one child. I mean, there's going to be those times where there's competition for attention or competition for just all of these things. But even for us, that I think that was magnified a little bit just in the settings we were in. And then as I mentioned, just trying to figure out both with the age difference, and then again just with a kind of a different dynamic where I felt a responsibility to look out for him, but there were times that maybe I had to do that in ways that were unique to our situation, but then as we got older, I still felt that responsibility to look out for him as he began to get older in a way. And I handled that in ways where I was more overbearing and tried to be more parental than, an example, or as more of a brotherly type of relationship. And so that really strained our relationship for a long time. And so, there came a point where for us, it really didn't matter what I said. It was going to be either taken out of context, or, it was going to be taken as though I'm, elevating my status and trying to tell you what you should or shouldn't do with your life. And so it really took a long time for us to kind of get past that. And I really had to kind of step back and go, okay, my role is not this now. My role is to be a brother, and my role is to, build a relationship and a friendship. And I feel like we've really gotten to, unfortunately it took to the time we were adults for the most part, but I feel like we've really gotten to a place where now, I can give him advice, or I can, we can have those conversations, and it's more of a brother relationship, and we've grown, I feel like we've grown a lot closer, but it's been a struggle, and there's a lot of variables and factors there.
So for parents who are, trying to help their kids with this, because no matter what the scenario, I think there's always competition between siblings.
Absolutely.
So do you have any advice for parents for how to maybe handle that, or how to notice that that's happening?
A little bit of, I think the first thing is just to be aware of it. Sometimes, I know for parents, I'm sure that when you've got kids there's constant fighting and there's a lot of things going on, it's easy to get wrapped up in just the circumstances and not look a little deeper into maybe what the cause of those circumstances are. And, you know, kids are always going to fight. Siblings are always going to fight. That's going to happen. But there's times where maybe there's a deeper issue. Maybe there's issues where, you know, it is a cry for some attention. Maybe there's something deeper going on there with some, you know, whether that's self-esteem issues or whether that's just, you know, maybe needing parents to hone in on some other things that maybe need to be addressed there. But just to be aware of that, and when there's a lot of that turmoil going on, beyond what should be normal, to maybe take a step back, and instead of just trying to address the immediate situation, start asking some questions and figuring out maybe what other things may be going on.
You know, that reminds me of one thing we talk about a lot is we don't want to just manage behavior. We want to monitor hearts. And I think that's a lot of what you just said there. You know, we sometimes when things are intense, we just want to stop the bad, you know, and it's kind of like the classic driving down the road and you just hit whoever's back there because you can reach them. Stop it, you know, and you know, you got to de-escalate the situation. But what something we often do is, you know, we try to separate. If there's a conflict, we try to separate, give some time to cool off, but then we schedule time to sit down with each kid and just, you know, kind of probe, you know, rather than just coming in and saying you did this wrong and here's the consequence. You know, probe, like, how are you doing, what's going on, you know, asking questions to probe what's going on in the heart to figure out that thing.
And one other thing I would add to that, even and again, just kind of from the personal experience, when you have siblings that are significant age difference, you know, sometimes I know their role becomes a little bit of helping to watch and take care of and lead and do those things. But there's also a balance of that, of one, helping those older kids to understand what their role is, and that, you know, you don't become the replacement for the parent, and the way that you lead and do these things should look different than the way you as a parent handle those things, because, you know, like I said, that was a pivotal thing that really resulted in a lot of our struggle, is just trying to understand and navigate. Older siblings can be such a valuable tool and resource for parents, you know, both just to have as additional help around the home. I know you guys have utilized that a ton. Yes. And can be such a great opportunity for, you know, the younger to learn from the older and actually have a stronger relationship as a result of that, if it's approached the right way.
Yeah, I agree. And then, you know, another thing that we're really aware in that whole scenario is just the value of forgiveness and quickly trying to reconcile situations. And we're always trying to help lay that foundation for our kids of don't let things linger, because you don't want to wait till you're an adult to deal with this and it's become this big festering wound. You know, one thing I watch with people's emotions, if you don't deal with something now, it's going to come out later, but it's going to be masked because you don't realize what it's really about, and it takes more effort to get to the bottom of that. Absolutely. So let's take care of that now, and we've really tried to model, rather than just the kind of the traditional obligatory, like, say you're sorry, you know, to use the language of how are you going to own your part in this. I really like what you said about what really was a shift in your relationship was when you stepped back and owned the fact that maybe you were being a little overbearing. You know, that started the process of healing, and that's what we want our kids to do. So what's your part in this, and how are you going to own that, and what's it going to take to fix that, and cause them to evaluate themselves first, rather than evaluating with the other person. That almost always leads to the apology and the forgiveness that needs to happen there. So absolutely,
and we know it's not easy.
No,
and it's really not a simple black and white of, hey, if you follow these steps, this is going to work exactly the way that you hope.
It is not for wimps, man. Raising kids is not for wimps. Raising teenagers is not for wimps. Raising young adults is not for wimps. It's not easy. And we at our house still every day there's some sort of fight, there's some sort of conflict. Some people are triangling and trying to get somebody voted off the island. I mean, like, this happens every day. The worst. It's just bizarre, but the worst time of our day is when we all have to get in the car and go somewhere. Like, if we have to all get in the car, we have assigned seats, you know, so there's 8 of us that have to get into a vehicle, you know, and so there's got to be a rhythm and a system here, and we've established it. Like, this is your seat and this is your. Doesn't matter. Everyone is always trying to sit in some other seat, and then they refuse to get out, and like, next thing you know, like bloody lips, and I mean, it gets ugly, and we're like, just follow the system, man.
Yeah, and that's what's amazing is some things don't they never change, because I mean that was one of the biggest sources of fights when we were kids, was like, who gets to sit in the front seat?
Yeah.
Or my dad had a truck that had a bench seat, and it was like, who got to sit by the window?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to sit, because it was a stick shift. You know, you don't want to be the one that sits in the middle, and so that was like war every single time.
Yeah. The other day we were in the car, and actually we were already in transit, but they were still arguing about what seat they were in. And next thing you know, someone's crying, and then someone else is crying. I'm like, what happened? It's like, she hit me, and she's like, well, she called me a name. And I'm like, well, you can't hit just because she called you a name, but she called me a name. Anyway, so we have not perfected this, and I don't think you ever will.
Just for a moment of brevity, I'm going to put you on the spot, though, because what is the most absurd or ridiculous thing you can think of that you've seen like a major like fight meltdown in your household over?
Oh wow, that is on the spot. There's a lot. I mean, we've had literally the she's breathing my air moments. like she's too close and she's breathed too much of my air. I mean, like that has happened. I'd say our worst fights are always about things that we've already established. Another one is like, so our girls share a room.
Yeah.
And they have their beds. Like they have the bed that they sleep in. They fight almost every night about what bed they're going to sleep in. I'm like, sleep in your bed. This is an easy solution. But what about this? And I'm not close enough to the fan. And I mean, no. Yeah. Just do what you're supposed to do. This baffles me. But so for us, we have to remind ourselves often, hey, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. Hey, this is a long game. We want to foster healthy relationships, and it just takes work and remind ourselves, of how to offer grace, how to seek forgiveness, and then we got to remind our kids of the same thing. And so we just keep reinforcing these truths through thick and thin. We consistency, I think, is so important.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this. Family devotions is a really good example. We've talked about that a lot. Yeah. Like we set a time, and we don't hit it every day, but we try to hit it. 75% of the time anyway, that we sit down together and we read the Bible and we pray together. And there's days where I can't get people to sit down and focus. And there's days where they just want to give quick Sunday school answers. And then there's days where we have deep discussions about real heart issues, but we do it every day, no matter which kind of day we're having. And that's what we got to do in this as well. It's like we just want to consistently foster that relationship. Good days, bad days, in different days. We just got to keep doing the same thing.
Yeah. And the things you're talking about, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of patience.
Yes, it does.
So now that you've got a couple of adult children now in your household, is it worth it?
Oh, absolutely. And again, there's days where it's not going well in every one of these scenarios, but we have watched over the last, particularly 3, 4, 5 years, our kids really form good, healthy friendships. And my oldest two, they're 20 and 18, but I'd say starting, when they were about 17 and 15, they started doing more things together. They started initiating with each other. They started, trying to make sure the other one was included. And they're tight. They're close. Yeah. And there's times where they yell and scream at each other. But at the end of the day, they love each other and they prefer each other's company over a lot of other people. And I've watched my younger kids, do a good job. Hannah, my third oldest, she's really good about drawing people into what she's doing. And so she'll, and she's good about sharing that. Like, so she'll take Isaac and, hey, let's do this together, Isaac. And then she'll take the little girls and say, hey, Ruthie, Josie, let's come and do this art project together, or let's go, do this thing outside and play a game. And so them taking that initiative to keep fostering those moments together it's just such a win.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've seen over and over, both in my situation and just countless other people and families that I've known, is when that's fostered from the beginning, there may even be times where where there's this separation, or people go and do their own things, or there's there's struggle and strife and things. But if that foundation's there, so many times as we get older and as we mature we come back to those things. Yes. And so even I think that's encouragement sometimes when it feels like maybe it's not going the way that you hope, or that you maybe feel like you failed in that, to be consistent and keep on doing those things, because sometimes there may be that period of where it just feels like nothing's working, but so often if there's a strong foundation there,
it reminds me, and this is the Mark paraphrase, but the proverb that says, you train your children up in the right way, in the godly way, in truth, and they will not depart from it when they're older. That's not a formula, like we said. There's outliers to that, but I think it's a principle that if we build that foundation, there's a great likelihood that even if they wander for a while, that they'll end up back on that foundation and know that that's what's important.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up today, our 2 takeaways are, the first is to check out the Making Brothers and Sisters Best Friend book and consider reading it with your family.
Good
and
book.
What was the name of the authors on that?
It's Sarah, Stephen, and Grace Malley, and we'll put a link in our notes. And like I said, at the end of every chapter, they've got quizzes, to evaluate your relationships, and they've got exercises for you to do together, and it's really good.
Awesome. And then number 2 is just to join us in 2 weeks as we do our next podcast and we talk about making moments, which will be fun. So, all right, be abnormal.